Right, hey guys, and welcome to today's tutorial. We're going to be doing a moth design, and it's all about details and textures. That's the focus, that's what I'm going to be learning you today. And this is quite a small design, but I think it's got everything in it to learn you how to get them really fine details and get that practice in for the more bigger designs. So I've printed the picture out here. I found this picture just on Pinterest and I think it's absolutely amazing, and the details in it look really fun to do as a tattoo. So yeah, I've got all the ink set out just as I normally use. Dynamic, my grey wash set that I mix myself, and world famous legendary black. I've got a 3 round liner, a 14 round shader and a 9 mag. That's all we need, them 3 needles. Now depending on the size you can use, you know, a little bit bigger, maybe a 5 liner and a bigger mag. But these 3 needles are all you need to do this design. I'm using the Inkjector machine, a Nano with a 3.5 stroke. Just standard how it comes. I absolutely love this machine, it's a good all-rounder, and yeah, I've always used Inkjectors. They're really good and they're nice for like brushing the shades in rather than sinking the needles. I've used a lot of different machines and these are really good for just peppering the shades and getting the details in nice. They're not too hard hitting, they're not too soft, they're just that nice in between. They're really simply made, the layout of them, it's not too fancy either, they're dead easy to work. So yeah, that's my setup. We're on 11 volts roughly, give or take, and that will probably stay the same throughout the whole design. So dead simple, easy setup. Yeah, let's get going, enjoy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and run through this as simply as I can, in step by step. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to use the liner and get the whole thing mapped in. Now what I'm focusing on is getting it like a permanent stencil, something really nice to look at, so then I can add shades over the top, especially with details. They need to go in first and then a shade over the top. You don't want to be shading, then adding details. They need to be the first layer. So how I'm going to do this is thinking about it like an illustrative drawing. Now I don't want to use the liner so harshly because it hasn't got an outline on the picture. There isn't really any outlines at all, apart from the lines on here. And a few black parts, there isn't really any lines. So what I'm thinking with the liner is just to kind of shade the lines in and just get that first layer down. And that's what I talk about in all the other videos. It's not about lining it or having it too harsh, it's about building it up in the correct order, in the right layers, so you can do that every time on every tattoo design. So what I'm going to do now is do all the lines and shade in all the lines, and then we'll move on to the next step. And watch me as I go and how I go about it. And if there's any pointers as I go, I'll talk about them and give you little tips along the way. But what we're going to try and do is just think of it as step by step. So lines, mark it all in, then we move on to the round shader or the mag. So for all of this, all I'm using is just the black. I'm not using any shades, even to mark in the light areas. I'm literally going less and more deep to create the lighter parts. I'm not using lighter shades, I'm literally, if I'm wanting a lighter part, I'll skim it on the top to make it less dark. So you can see here I'm more dotting the parts in already, because these haven't really got a straight edge, they've got textures in already. And I'm going to start on the right hand side of the design and then slowly work across on something like this, because it's really important to keep that stencil on. But this was the part I looked at and thought, yeah, that's the part I want to do first, that I feel confident doing and it looks fun. You can start wherever you want on the design, and the dots I'm not even going too harsh, I'm just getting it marked in. Right, perfect. Now that step 1's complete, we're going to move on to step 2. So as you can see now, I've marked in all of the moth. A lot of the parts look really dark and I haven't even wiped it yet, but I'm keeping it like that for a reason, and I would do this on real skin when I'm tattooing as well. So as bits wipe off, you can see a really light version of it underneath. And now as I build on top of that, it'll give it that solid look on step 2 that will make it permanent and be nice. If I wiped it all off how it is now, there wouldn't be barely anything there and it'd be really hard to read. So now I'm going to move on to the round shader and maybe even come in and mix it up with the liner afterwards. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to colour in the black parts, solid black to start out with, and then also where I can shade parts with the round shader, and that'll just build it up to be an illustrated version of what it's going to be. And then after that step I can really have fun with it and start adding the details in. But I've stippled out a few parts here and put some details in, but kind of kept it almost like a rough version of what it's going to be. And this gives me room to adjust and shade, and it's all done pretty much a skimmed light version of what it's going to be now. So if I wipe this off, it'd all just be really light, apart from the parts where I'm going to be colouring in black. This really helps me with all my pieces doing it this way, because it gives me a routine of how I do the tattoo. Now if I really wanted to, when I started this section, to just go at that and start colouring in, but if you do that, other parts will start rubbing away, you'll end up dipping between the inks and bits won't be the same. So doing it how I've done it here, it makes everything the same. So the shades over here and the routine of it gives me a good plan. Right, so let's start with the round shader now, and I've still got that out really far, and we're going to dip straight in the black and kind of mix between the black and maybe even just working through what shades I want to do. So I'm seeing it just as like almost like a jigsaw and doing piece by piece. So we'll start with the easy part, and that's where we very first started lining. Now this bit's easy and it's just solid black, so we can literally just start colouring away at it. So small little circles to get it nice and solid. The fake skin is quite difficult to get it actually solid black. So a lot of these tattoos that I do, I always find when I wipe it at the end I have to go over and over to get it nice, whereas when I'm tattooing like on human skin, it absolutely flies in and there's no need to work it that much. But these are really good to kind of get your techniques down and even practice new techniques, especially with something like this where I want to work on getting the details as much as I can. And these obviously, they do give quite a blurry look. It's quite hard to get the details in, so it's really good practice actually. So what I'm doing here is I'm going right over the lines. Because they're really light, I kind of want to blur them out so they're not there anymore. Unless it's a really harsh, like, unless it's meant to be there in a detailed finish, I'm going right over the lines to give it that blurred look, and kind of just flicking them out in all directions. And when I'm looking at the piece, I'm looking at the reference photo, and I'm almost looking at what it is and what direction I'm going with the needle, and I'm kind of copying it even with the round shader. So I'm dotting parts now, even though it is a shader, and that just gives that effect. You've got to think what effect it is and do the same movement with your hand. So I'm going different depths here as well. So as I want it to blur out more, I'll go in lighter with the needle. And then where it fades out, I'm obviously going lighter with the needle. And then where it's more solid, I'm going slower and more concentrating on the black. I absolutely love this legendary world famous ink. It's really good for getting that deep, solid, matte black that's really deep. I find a lot of other black inks, they have a bit of a bluey tinge to them, but this ink, it just goes so deep black straight away. And even when it heals like on real skin, it stays that nice black over time. And you can see now I'm just starting to go in and cross hatch a few bits as it gets lighter, and just building it and building it up. Now don't worry about it being almost too blurry as well. So parts here where I'm flicking it out and I'm seeing already, I'm dying to put some textures and some dots in, but just remember the next part of this will be with the liner, and that's where your final details and textures will come in. So parts like here you can see already where I could quite easily just colour in the line, but instead I'm going the direction that it is on the photo, and you've got to keep that direction and almost kind of blur it out, because the more you colour in and get solid edges, the less real things start to look. So the more thick, lined and just block coloured, it will start to look more cartoony. So you've got to kind of fade the blacks out best you can and keep it more on that loose side. Have fun with it. Now parts like this, you can dot them as well, because that is the texture kind of built up. Or what I've done here is I've put a few lines in and then I'm going over with the round shader. So there's two options there that you can do. I find it easier with the round shader, it gets more coverage. But depending, if it was going on real skin, depend on which part of the body as to what kind of needle I'd use. If it was an awkward area, I probably would end up dotting it in, just because I find it easier and more better for a heel. I see all the time people are saying like, why are you dotting that area in if it's a part to colour? And especially like eyes or something like that, and for me I just find it heals a lot better. The round shader, it can be quite hard to use, especially on awkward areas of the body, and it's very easy to overwork with a round shader. It's took me years and years of practice to the point where I feel comfortable using the round shader, and I could probably do a whole piece with the round shader, even like big areas of shade. But I found that that's really helped me for getting like textures in pieces and details. Like a lot of people would use a mag, and they would probably use a mag for a lot of this as well, but I feel like you get a lot more detail with a round shader, and it's almost like that next level. When you see some of like the top artists, and you'll look at the piece and you'll think, how have they got that much detail? And I feel like that's the round shader. That's the needle that you want to practice and get really good using. And pieces like this are really good for the practice of using the round shader. So here now I'm going over some of the parts that I've kind of lined and dotted in, and that's just because I want to make them a little bit more blurry, like how I did on these parts over here where I've had a nice fade out. I kind of want to get that effect on some other parts as well, and then when I go in with the liner I can choose where I want to be sharp, detailed, and that'll make the parts that are detailed really stand out. So I'm just going in different depths all the time here, flicking it out all directions, and that's just giving it that more blurry look. And more saturated as well. Now I'm still only using the black. There's lots of bits that I'm looking at that I'm absolutely dying to do. Over here, here. But they're more built up with the dark or extra dark rather than the black. So just don't get carried away too soon. Make sure you're doing it in the right places. And that's something, when I get a piece and I print it out, I did spend almost 10 minutes looking at it and kind of planning where I'm going to put the black, what needles I'm going to use. And if you can break it down like that before you do a tattoo, it'll help you so much. So this is another part, like what I said before about building up. On the body of the moth, it does look like it's just black, but if you can get some textures in and build it up, it is hairs. So what I'm doing is I'm almost putting in the hairs of black to build it up to being black, rather than just colouring it in. Because if you just coloured that in with a mag or round shader and just blocked it in black, it would look more cartoony. So what I'm doing it now is I'm building it up in almost hairs to create that really saturated look, but then you will find it looks more like hairs, as you can see there. Right, that's step 2 done. So now on to step 3. And I've still got the round shader out. We've coloured all the bits of black that I want to do at the moment. And now I'm going to mark in over the parts that I've lined already, especially around the outside, but just start putting some basic shades in where I want them, blending parts out. So what I'm probably going to do is these parts here, the outside, and just put in some rough shades in where I want them before I then start putting the textures in. So this doesn't have to be the final shades, it's literally carrying on, just marking it in, and then we can probably start giving it a wipe from there, and it'll be at the point where we can really start having fun with it. So I've still got the needle hanging right out, and I'm just cross hatching away with the round shader and getting some of these big areas mapped in. As you can see here, these are the parts that are trying to disappear. So what we're aiming for is almost like a permanent stencil that we can build upon from there. The last thing we want is parts to start disappearing and then it becomes stressful. So I'm using the dark at the moment, and just mixing kind of between the dark and the medium. And it's the same as like what I said with the areas that we've dotted in black. I'm going over these parts, but just with the medium. And as you can see, the lines are starting to disappear. And what we want is that kind of, that blurry look, and it being more permanent. Now some of these parts are, they have quite a bit of texture in. So what I'm not getting too carried away with the shades that I'm putting in, because I do want to build in and add some texture with these parts. Now as you can see, I'm not going over all of the parts, and there's a lot of parts in here where I still want to kind of get that texture and that look, and especially up here into these sections. I started a little flick here, and then I want to put the texture in before I put the final shades in over the top, because if you put the shading in first then the detail, it will not be as textured. So I'll always put the texture in first with the liner, then I'll go over the top with a shade. So with these sections here, these are only the parts that I'll be working on top of with shades. There won't be, unless it's a kind of bit of a mix, so especially on the bottom here, there'll be some parts that I'll put in and some parts I'll leave, and I'll kind of swap between the two. Now you can already see where I'm kind of dotting with the round shader, and then that's me kind of kneading that liner. So as I come up into here, you have to be really careful of what you can and can't mark in, because I do want to put them textures in first. Right, now we're on to step 4, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with the liner and just really tidy things up, and then start putting some textures in on these parts here. So all the parts that I've mapped in around the outside, I can now finish off and get the details in there and textures that I want. But I'm just going to go in different depths, different kind of techniques, just each bit will be completely different. So a lot over here would be kind of dots, and then over here it'll just be kind of refining, but not too harshly in. I don't want to line it, I just want to put in the kind of textures, and then after that we can shade over the top and really get some layers in. So let's put the reference really close, and then we can look at it and get it as close as we can. So like I said before, I'm still using the liner and I'm just using black, the dynamic lining black, for all the textures. I'm not using any lighter shades. And now I'm starting working up to this part where we can start putting some more textures, probably more dotty kind of effect, but not just putting it in straight up and down. What I'm going to do is kind of different directions, and then it's not all too much the same. So as it blends out, I want to kind of mix it up, so a bit of dots and then a bit of a wick shade, and that's just flicking it on the surface. That will give me lots of dots, and then going in with the liner as well and dotting. And then for the bits where it's fur, I'm putting them in as actual lines, but just flicking them in and out. And keeping it all the same direction as well. I don't want to be going across the way, because on the picture it is all going that direction. Now the reason why I'm not just dotting it all and having it all so random is that I don't want it too uniform. I feel the more it looks the same, the less real it'll look. So that's why I'm mixing it up between dotting really slowly like this and then having a bit of a stipple shade as well. Now it will look quite bitty after we do this, but then when I shade over the top, it'll obviously smoothen and you'll get them layers. So don't do all of it with the liner, because you could quite easily get carried away. You remember that next shade is going to build it in and darken it as well. Now you can see already the difference between this side and that side. And don't feel like you have to do too much on this side, you can always come back to it. So I'm probably going to start coming over here and building the whole thing up before I really start putting details in. Right, now that we have some of the textures in, I haven't done all of them yet. I'm actually going to start layering over with the mag. So step 5, we're going to layer over with the mag and start really building up some layers, and then we can go back in with the round shader and the liner and do final details and just get it really insane then with details and texture. So I'm going to start building up on and layering over where I've put the textures already and get that shade nice and solid. So you can see now I've put the textures in on both sides. There's still bits here and there to do. These sections here, I want to get them with a round shader, and then bits of in between a liner and a round shader. So I'm going to leave them bits for now and just get it a little bit more built up with the mag first. But the main tip here is put the texture in first, then shade over the top. So if it does come to a part that I haven't done yet, like over here, I want to put the texture in, then shade over the top. But I feel like as long as you get to where you want to be, you can move around, and especially with something like this, build it up how you want to. Just make sure you're doing it in the right process, and that would be putting the texture in first before you go over with the mag. Now I've just got like a medium shade here, and I'm just skimming over the top and just layering it up, and it should darken quite easy. I don't want to get too carried away and hide the textures that I've put in already. It's more just building on top and getting it more saturated. So I'm just mixing it up between the medium and the dark shade at the moment. Haven't really gone in with any of the lights yet, and I'm just skimming on the top, so just cross hatching over to build it up. So you can see there, each shade that we're putting over, it becomes nice and saturated. So I'm going to try and build that up everywhere I can, hit the bigger parts, and this is just between like the dark and the medium, and kind of whatever shades you feel, just cross hatching until it becomes the right shade, more or less. So you can see on here where I'm going over and just giving it that one pass, and it's just deepening each time that we go over, and just keep doing that on parts until it builds up. Right, so now that we've put a few shades in with the mag, I haven't got too carried away actually. I've just literally skimmed in a few shades and darkened things up and just put that base shade there. Now, with a lot of tattoos, you'd get it to this point and you'd be happy, but to get it to almost the next level, this is where it comes in with the round shader and really going in and getting it to that next level. I'm going to put in these parts here with the round shader, and then I'm going to go in just here and there and get little details in and make it a lot better. You can only really do that by building it up in these layers. So, because if it was on like a real person, you don't want to overwork the skin or go into the area too much. And this way, the texture with the shade over the top is like built-in layers already, and it's starting to look more how I want it. The next step and how you work it after that is what really takes it to that next level with your black and grey. So I'm going to shade these areas in and then literally just go at more detail and start really touching some parts up and making them really nice. And you can see over here where I've gone in with the liner in comparison to this side where it's not as detailed, and I can really start just picking at bits. But here where the texture is, I want that texture first, and then now it's ready for the round shader just to go right over the top and really get in the layers. If it had just gone straight in with the round shader from the start, it wouldn't have that textured look. And that's the thing that we're trying to get here, is the textures and that really advanced look. And it's actually making it a lot easier doing it this way, because I have that process in order, so I know what I'm doing. So we're not far off. Once we've got these sections in, then all we're really doing then is adding a couple more layers and really getting into some details and fun parts then. Now I'm just really looking at the reference here, and I mean with stuff like this, I wouldn't say it has to be exactly the same. You're more going for that look. So if it's hair, for example, these hairs aren't going to be in the exact same place. What I'm doing is I'm just giving the look of the hairs, and now with the lines there already, as I'm shading over the top, it looks that little bit more blurry, and I can kind of pick and choose how blurry I want it to be as well with the round shader. Now these little fiddly bits, they do take quite a while, so I'll do a couple bit more on this and you can watch me work, and then we'll jump in and have a bit of a fast forward to getting into the fun part. So I'm probably going to use a mix of the round shader and the liner. Like I said before, I'm getting as much as I can now with the liner, I mean with the round shader, before I then go in with the liner and just really tighten it up and refine it. My goal with doing pieces like this is getting it to the point where I can build and build and build upon the piece. And that's the same when I'm doing it on skin. It's took me a long time to get the confidence and the knowledge to be able to do that. And I think the cross hatching process, that is what really makes a difference for me. It gives me a lot more time to build upon the tattoo, rather than if you were, for example, on here just rubbing it in like that. You can really go over like this, and that will be a lot nicer on the skin, and you'll know then exactly how much you've built it up. Whereas the other way, if you're rubbing and rubbing, it goes very red quickly on real people, and it's a struggle to see what shades you've put in. So like I mentioned before, I've put these parts in with a liner, and I'm just going over them now with a round shader, and that's just to blur them in a bit and to get it that little bit more real. Now you can see here where I'm not really colouring, I'm kind of just dabbing away, and that's still me working on the textures. I'm not just colouring in, I'm kind of building up on textures. So like what I did with the liner, I'm kind of dabbing away and dotting with the round shader, and that's just giving me the kind of softer textures. Now you can see already the textures are finally starting to come out, and it's all starting to look really nice and detailed. And this is where I just really want to refine and get things kind of tightened up and blurred out, so like a mixture of both, and that's with the round shader and the liner. So I'm still on with using the medium and the dark. I haven't really used any light tones yet, and that's mainly because I haven't felt like I've needed them as such. I might use more of the light tones to kind of water down if I feel like it needs it. But I'll probably end up just skimming here and there between, just to really saturate some of the dark areas with the light tones, but at the moment I haven't felt like I've needed it. And I think that's mainly because it's that detailed and textured. You really want to be able to see the contrast between everything. And having that texture there first and shading over the top, it kind of gives us all them different shades, or at least helps give me them shades up front. So like in here, that shade still is just a dark or a medium, but it looks like it blends out, and that's mainly because of the texture that I've already put underneath. So having that kind of illustrated effect of building it up from the start, I think that really does help with any realism piece, because all of the tones are already there and you can simply shade and add to it already looking nice, rather than the stress of trying to build it up, and then things start healing differently and it becomes very stressful. So you can see now with the round shader I'm kind of saturating over some parts to get them a lot deeper, and just give that extra layer and blend, and then kind of going in where I want to finish parts and just add a bit more detail. But like up here where I'm doing now, I'm just putting in layer and building it up until kind of I'm happy. And you can keep coming back to parts as you go this way, because you're not going to overwork them doing it the way I'm doing it. You can see now where I'm just layering over and blending it out. And that's literally just me cross hatching over and just getting it that one shade darker as I go. So let's give it a wipe down and see where we're up to now. It's actually taking shape now. Right, so we'll move back into the liner, and this is where the really fun bits are. So we can go in and just really sharpen things up, and we can put any more details in we feel we need, and pretty much for some of these parts, especially along the top, I'm going to kind of do what we did before and just build up them textures, and in exactly the same kind of motions that I did before. It's just kind of the parts you want darker, you know, the needle's more in, and the parts where it fades out, I'll do it obviously less, and just kind of almost dotting it in and just shading on the top. You definitely don't want to sink that needle too far in. You can even just flick it along the surface, give it a wipe, and then see what it's looking like, and then go from there with how you want to do more parts on it. And even for some of these little tight areas, you can see now where I'm just even shading, and that's exactly the same movements as what I did with the round shader. You can just go across one way, back the other, and just cross hatch it and build it up. So what I'm doing here, as I want to blend the textures into some of these dark bits that have a little bit of texture but not so much, not as prominent as here, you can see I've got a shade there already, but I am kind of stippling into that over the top with a liner, and that's kind of given me a mixture of both. It's saturating that area to make it darker, and it might end up leaving me a little bit of texture. So you're kind of getting a bit of both there, which is ideal. Now you can see on this side it's starting to look a lot more better than that side, and that's just me refining and refining. So the more we can do that, and the better it'll look. Right, now we're on the final steps. So I'm just going to put in some little more textures and tidy any little bits up that I can see with the liner, and just really sharpen up anything I can, wherever I can, just to make it a bit more solid. So any little edges and maybe even a couple more textures just to blend it out, and then we're going to put some white highlights in to finish it off. So now it's just about really picking any little bits you can see and getting it just as solid as you can. You can see here we haven't got an outline, but I'm just making it more solid so it's it'll stay better. And that's just with building it up until it gets to that point. And you can see from before it's improved a hell of a lot. And that's just building it up layers and layers. You don't want to get too carried away, but that's the difference between an okay tattoo and bringing your tattoos to that next level. Right, we're not far off for the white now. So I'm going to set out for the white, and then at the end I can really start picking at it. But how we've got to now that gives you a clear idea of how you can build up textures and really get all them details and build up a piece from start to finish. So what I do after this stage now is just making it better and better, and you can go at it as much as you want to improve it and really get into those details. But I'm going to add the white now, and that should help give a lot of difference and just bring out some of these parts, especially with the fur and in the little details that I've left for. I'm just using a free liner again, different brand because I don't have any more of them ones, but still exactly the same, 3 liner, and we'll get some nice little details in. And this will just really make it pop. So in between the little gaps, I'm not even lining it so harshly, I'm more just shading on some of these parts as well. And as you can see, it just really highlights them in between and makes it look more like the hair. So just brush in and brush out and just build it up until you're happy. This is really good for bringing out them extra little details. So I'm just still using the liner, and on some of the bigger areas I am just kind of stippling it in, especially for these parts where it is a bigger section. Now you shouldn't need too much white, because the areas that are white I've left completely blank and haven't shaded them at all, and that's always a big aim for me, is to leave bits and have it so contrast that it barely needs any white. On the fake skin you can get quite carried away and put as much as you want in because the skin takes it, but on a real person I wouldn't recommend putting loads of white in. It's more just for the highlights. And you can even now put some textures in with the white. So like what we did before, it's not just for highlights. I can get these kind of dotty textures in, and that really helps. Especially where these lines go through, I really like them, and I just want them to pop that little bit more. So dotting in the white textures is kind of like the last layer to really bring the details out. And don't worry about getting it exactly the same textures, you just want to give that effect. So the more little dots and sparkles that you can get in it, kind of the better really. The white's really good for getting in between the little black areas where you've dotted and there's little bits in between. You can get them with the white. Yeah, look at the difference on that already. That's really bringing out them little textures that we've put in. And because we haven't put so much shade in it, layering over on the texture, it means we can work that white in and kind of like wherever you want it to give that different look, and just shade over the white and it'll separate the two shades and give it a more deeper kind of colour grey. It'll change it a bit. So you can see here I'm still following the lines that I was on about before and keeping it that same direction. And there we have it, we are done. That is us all finished and complete, all the textures in. If you have any comments, let me know in the comments down below. And I hope this video has been helpful to anyone watching. If they are helping you out, please do us a favour and subscribe down below. And if there's any videos you want me to make or tutorials that you want to see, hit me up, let me know. Thanks for watching.